I'm Dennis Anderson, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North. We'll focus on Native Americans in the Minnesota school system with a special report on Deer River's Anishinaabe Education Program. Local educators then join us to talk about steps to improve education outcomes for Native students. And we'll have the latest in our special series, Meet Your Candidates, as we hear from hopefuls in Minnesota House legislative races. These stories and more coming up right now on Almanac North. Hello and welcome once again to Almanac North. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Dennis Anderson. Julie is off this week as we alternate hosting the program during the pandemic. Our show was recorded on Thursday afternoon. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz this week signed a major bonding bill passed in the special legislative session. The $1.9 billion package was termed historic by the governor and received strong bipartisan support. A number of northern Minnesota projects are in that bill, and money to keep the Togo and Willow River correctional facilities open was also included. A surge in COVID cases in Minnesota and Wisconsin has health officials on high alert. The Badger State saw its highest single-day death count Wednesday when 48 people died from COVID. Minnesota cases are also spiking, with 35 deaths reported Wednesday, tying the state's record since the pandemic began. Despite the pandemic, unemployment rates are going down in northern Wisconsin. The Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development said unemployment was 6.9% in Superior in September. That's down from a high of 21% reported in April. A Hennepin County District Court judge sustained 8 of 9 charges against the 4 former Minneapolis police officers accused in the death of George Floyd. Derek Chauvin has been charged with second-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter. The other 3 defendants have been charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder and aiding and abetting second-degree manslaughter. And this week's early snow created a havoc on the roads as Northlanders adjust to hazardous driving conditions. Numerous accidents reported on Tuesday as several inches of wet, greasy snow fell in the region. With more snow predicted over the weekend, St. Louis County Sheriff's officials remind drivers to slow down, give ourselves plenty of time to arrive at our destination. Over the summer, our staff had a number of virtual discussions with leaders of color about systemic racism. A common theme was inherent bias in our education system and how that plays out. We begin tonight with one Native woman who felt she couldn't be her true self at school. Red Cliff band member Michelle Defoe reflected on the trauma of her classroom experience.
I remember just thinking our only existence was 1 week in the history books, and that history that was told was from a non-Native perspective. Being in the public school systems was probably the most traumatic experience that I had, and it was mostly just that Native people don't exist. And so the only thing that really helped me was we had Indian advocates, and they were placed there on purpose. And so I would spend hours of class time in the Indian Ed office, just doing beadwork and hanging out and doing my homework. So that was my little safe space. It was traumatic because I didn't feel safe there. And I felt like I couldn't talk about being Native or openly be Native. I had to blend in, is what it felt like.
Defoe's experience inspired her to become an educator. She has a master's degree in education with World Indigenous Languages as her focus. Deer River High School is finding success with its Anishinaabe Education Program. The school's inclusive approach makes it an option for non-Native students to participate in that program. Producer Ramona Morozes recently visited the school and found out how it is building bridges between cultures.
I feel very empowered and very grateful that we get this opportunity to even, remember our ancestors in this way and practice our traditions and practice our teachings. Ikoy Anishinaabe Makondude Bagadawaning and Da. Indunjabagaye. I'm a student here at the River High School. My name is Nikaya Losh. I'm in the Anishinaabe Ed programs. I spend quite a while in the Anishinaabe room. As much as I can go in there, you know, it's counted just as a regular credit, which, I don't know, is pretty cool that we get to do that. We practice our culture and our teachings and still get our credits for it.
Bonjour, Bedwewe Juano Anishinaabe Makwan and Dudem, Gazagasquad Jamaica and Dunjaba. My English name is Lavender Kingbird. My Indian name is the sound of a waterfall from a distance. And I work for the Deer River Public School District.
Right now we're doing, they're practicing the rice harvesting. We call that Minoman rice. And so that's what they're doing right now. We go within the seasons. Lavender has advanced beading classes, advanced regalia making classes. Gerald teaches Ojibwe history classes. He teaches Ojibwe, different Ojibwe classes.
Our first project has been a beaded lanyard rope in those 4 original jingle dress colors, the red, the yellow, the blue, and the green. So these classes, we have gone out to get the wood, the cedar, and at that time we have also harvested other medicines like the swamp tea, the winter mint, or the winter green mint, and we just recently did black ash baskets. So that's what they're burning right now, is the trimmings of what was left over in those baskets.
I am the coordinator for our Anishinaabe Gikanu Amadi Wigamegoon program. Our program needed a different worldview. We didn't have a very good reputation as far as education goes. So what I decided to do was provide some opportunities for our own kids to explore their identity. When I went through high school here, I didn't want to be here. I graduated from this place. I didn't want to be here at all. I found every opportunity to walk home or hitchhike home, or I didn't do well. I didn't want to be here, and for many reasons. A lot of it had to do with a feeling of being an alien here. You go to another school district and see what they have to offer, and I think we're most likely pretty progressive over here compared to the other districts regarding educating our kids about what we do as Native people. As an Indigenous person, that's what we need first, is a caring, kind teacher. I told a little boy yesterday, was sitting in my office, his grandmother is very ill in a hospital, and he told me she's not gonna make it. And he had his head down like this here, and he was crying. And I just looked at him and I said, you know why we're here? And he goes, no. I said, well, because we care about you. And he is a very kind young man that has grown up in very difficult circumstances. And we have a lot of children like that. You know, taking responsibility for these kids in our own community is huge.
We have students that come in that are suffering with a lot of different traumas, dysfunction within the communities. There's a lot of alcoholism, drug abuse. We have a lot of parents that are unable to parent their children for whatever reasons, and a lot of our students live in foster care. They live with other family members. The classroom is open for students of any color, of any race, of any background, that they feel comfortable and welcomed within our classroom, and in the environment that we have created to make such a safe space for them. to be open-minded and to identify however they want to, that they are receiving that knowledge and that education about why Anishinaabe students are the way that they are. And so it's really opening up a lot of conversations, I think, that we are so accepting of one another.
We've had a couple cohorts of Native kids outperform non-Native kids in our district in math. Last year, 2 years ago in science, our 8th graders scored 78 point something on our MCAs, and the non-Native kids scored 73%. So when our kids are stronger, they're able to graduate. When our kids are stronger, they're able to perform better in school. And our test results at this school have increased over the last 15 years since we've been here. Our numbers have doubled in population. Kids want to come to school, and one of the reasons that they want to come to school is because they feel like it's part of their school too.
With the inclusiveness of non-Native students in the Anishinaabe Ed program, I feel like it gives them a little more understanding of who we are and our culture identity. Many Native youth are very, nervous to show who they are and to practice their culture in front of others, as they shouldn't be. So with the inclusiveness of non-Native students in the program, it gives them a little bit of insight into who we are as our people. So when I was younger and I would wear my traditional outfits, I would feel very nervous to walk around in them, to be seen by others, because sometimes they would look at me a little funny, why was she wearing her skirt all day? But now as I grow older, I realize what this skirt means, and a lot of that is because of Lavender. She taught me really that this skirt is medicine, and as women, we're so powerful. We're so powerful that we wear our skirts so all of our power can go to the earth.
Now, according to the Minnesota Department of Education, the 4-year graduation rate of Native students is just over 50%. The Department of Education provided the following statement from Commissioner Mary Catherine Ricker. Quote, "Supporting our Indigenous students and families is a top priority for the Minnesota Department of Education. We have a goal of ending high school dropouts across the board and ensuring all of our Indigenous students are graduating, and this is a critical part of that effort." End of quote. Ricker also mentioned learning from successful programs like the one at Deer River High School. Joining us now with more on this topic is Edie Washington, the American Indian Education Coordinator with Duluth Public Schools. And Dr. Marcia Liu is a Lake Superior College TRIO Student Advisor in Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Thank you both for being here. This is quite a subject for the Northland. We've heard, Edie, that for some time Native graduation rates are down. What factors kind of play into that?
I believe some of the factors that play into the way of our graduation rates being, they kind of fluctuate up and down. But I do know that some of our American Indian students, they don't feel that they are a part of a system that embraces their identity and culture and language, and there's a disconnect there. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like that plays a part. Lack of being represented in our curriculum also plays a huge part. And there's a whole lot of, I'd have to say, historical trauma when it comes to the education system amongst American Indian communities, mm-hmm. because there's a lot of history there that isn't it's not a good experience for our American Indian community and students.
Marcia, does that change at all by the time Native students get to college?
I don't believe so, not from what I've seen. With my specific position, I work with a lot of students who are first generation, low income, or
Sure.
students who identify with disabilities. So then there's a lot of intersectionalities that come into play as well. And that historical trauma also follows them throughout their educational paths and into their careers sometimes. So I see that.
Maybe you can both answer this. What can be done to increase graduation rates? What needs to be done?
Like you said, I work for Duluth Public Schools, and my experience growing up in the education system, and I went through Duluth Public Schools for my entire educational career, and I came back as an educator to help figure out how do we increase graduation rates for our American Indian community. And so one of the things that I started, we're in our 7th year right now, is we started an Ojibwe language immersion program, and that program is inclusive of all students. And so for us, our curriculum focuses on the moon cycle from an Indigenous perspective, from an Ojibwe perspective. And so as we're introducing math, science, social studies, we are actually teaching them from an Ojibwe perspective. And to me, that is really helping our young kids have a really good sense of identity, sense of self. And it's also sharing experiences and our perspectives with non-Indigenous students in our school district. And I think that right there is a pretty good strategy. And I believe it's, moving forward to help our students.
Sure. Marcia, does that stop at high school once you've graduated, or does that continue on into college?
I believe that continues on into college. I know for myself as a Korean American person going throughout school, I went to school in Wisconsin, I didn't have anyone to identify with. And so I see the connection piece at the college level come into play. Students want to see someone, they want to connect with someone who has similar experiences or a similar background.
So that begs the question, why are cultural initiatives so important throughout school and into college?
Growth, connection. I think the more students learn from a younger age growing up, they can grow and learn more.
And cross cultures.
Across cultures, definitely.
High school?
I believe that those connections are definitely made amongst our students. And when we're talking about multicultural education in high school, I think it shows through those avenues that our students, there are some similarities, but there are also some unique differences that are brought to the surface. And I think those are the things that we need to celebrate and move forward in education. So we have a strong understanding of who we're in the classroom with and who we're going to go out into the world with.
Does cultural education help break down barriers? Or not necessarily?
I feel like cultural education, depending on your spin, on how you present it, potentially could break down barriers. To me, if we're talking about cultural education, the way that I understand culture, it's a way of life. And for us to talk about breaking down some of those systemic barriers, we need to understand how the system was created and who it was created for. And if it wasn't created for my community, how do I figure out how to move forward to help break down some of those barriers and systems that were set in place not to benefit?
I wish we had much more time. We don't. We're already out of time. Edie, Marcia, thank you so very kindly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
You bet. Now we continue our coverage of the state legislative races in our region. We've invited the candidates running for the House in our region to submit short videos to introduce themselves to voters. We'll begin with Minnesota House District 7A, which lies in the eastern portion of the city of Duluth. We will hear first from incumbent Democrat Jen Schultz, followed by the Republican challenger Tom Sullivan.
Hi, I'm Jen Schultz, State Representative for East Duluth. I'm proud of the work I've accomplished this session. As chair of the Long-Term Care Committee, I championed protections for older adults, secured funding for the Duluth Medical District, and passed legislation to address the pandemic. I wish to return to St. Paul to continue using my expertise in economics and healthcare to help our community. Due to the pandemic, families and businesses are struggling, and we face a huge task of rebuilding our economy. I'm determined to help build affordable healthcare, an economy that protects our environment and fights the climate crisis while creating good jobs, an education system that works for all students, a reformed justice system fair to everyone, and we need to create a system that divides wealth fairly. I ask for your support. With your help, we can make a future that is truly great for everyone.
Hi, I'm Tom Sullivan, running for State Representative, House District 7A. My wife Kathy and I have lived in Duluth for the past 48 years. We raised our 4 children here because we love Duluth and we love the area. You may also recognize me from my days of Karate North and Phase 2, where I had the opportunity to work with literally thousands of Duluthians. I also worked for Cirrus Aircraft for almost 15 years, starting as a corporate pilot, finishing in the sales department. Today, I work for United Piping as a part-time corporate pilot. I want the citizens to know that I'm for limited government. I want to hold the line on taxation, and I will work to lower healthcare costs. I will always support our law enforcement. I'm asking for your vote on November 3rd. Tom Sullivan, House District 7A.
And next we will meet the candidates in Minnesota House District 7B, which is made up of the central and western neighborhoods of Duluth and includes Park Point and Fond du Lac. We will hear first from Republican challenger Art Johnston, followed by the Democratic incumbent Liz Olson.
Hello, I'm Art Johnston, candidate for Minnesota House 7B, representing West Duluth. Here's why you should vote for me. I will work to open the economy. The lockdowns are not sustainable. We have to go on with our lives. I'll work to bring good paying union jobs to Duluth, including supporting mining, timber, and shipping in the port. I'll work to open our schools. I was on the school board for 8 years, virtual learning without face-to-face contact with teachers. Not good enough for our children's academic, social, and mental health. And parents should not have to be literally homeschooling their children, unless, of course, they want to. Finally, not long ago, I was a DFLer, but the DFL no longer reflects Duluth and Greater Minnesota's values. They have lost their namesakes, farmers and laborers. But I pride myself in bridging these gaps, and I will take pride in again giving Duluth working men and women a strong voice in St. Paul. Vote for me, Art Johnston. Vote for Duluth for a change.
Hi, I'm Liz Olson, State Representative for District 7B in the Minnesota House, and I'm running for re-election. The COVID-19 crisis has upended our communities and our economy. The killing of George Floyd exposed the deep racial justice work we need to do here as a state. Yes, these are big challenges, but I believe Minnesotans can rise to the occasion. Minnesotans care deeply about one another and want to make sure everyone in our state can achieve their dreams. And together we can tackle those challenges. It's my job as your state representative to amplify your voice at the Capitol. And I want to continue to have that opportunity moving forward and to take that voice and to enact policies and budgets that reflect our shared values of caring for one another, to ensure we all have health care coverage, that we've tackled climate change before it's too late, and that we've done something to make sure our students can have a world-class education here in Minnesota. There's so much to do, but we do this work together, and I hope I can have your support on November 3rd.
And finally this week, we featured the candidates running for the legislature in Minnesota House District 11A. The district includes all of Carlton County, 4 townships in southern St. Louis County, and 2 townships in northern Pine County. We will hear first from Republican challenger Jeff Dotseth, followed by the incumbent Democrat Mike Sundin of Esco.
Hello folks, my name is Jeff Dotsett. I'm running to be your next Minnesota State Representative for Minnesota House Seat 11A. I'm running for a political seat, but I'm definitely not a politician. I'm a lifelong Minnesotan. I'm a small business owner. I live on our family farm with my beautiful wife Melissa, where we've got 3 grown children and 2 beautiful grandchildren. I'm running to be a fresh voice for the people. My #1 priority when I get to St. Paul next year will be to help our families and businesses get back on their feet. Minnesotans have sacrificed way too much, tremendously, some losing their jobs, even their businesses. Altogether, legislators is going to have to respond forcefully all through next year to help people pick up their pieces. My goal is to help bring good old-fashioned common sense back to our state. I humbly ask for your vote this November. Again, I'm Jeff Dotsett. I'm running to be your next Minnesota State Representative. Thank you.
I'm Mike Sundin, State Representative from District 11A. I'm asking for your vote on November 3rd. Compromise and cooperation are rare commodities in St. Paul these days, but I'm proud of my bipartisan voting record in the House. Be aware that I will continue to serve our state to the best of my ability by prioritizing my votes as they affect my district first, state of Minnesota second, and partisan issues third. Every vote will be viewed through the lens of a working family. With an eye on the future for our children and grandchildren, we will face the challenges of our new normal together. Make your vote count on November 3rd or before. Thank you.
And you can see and hear longer speeches from all of the candidates who submitted videos on our website, wdse.org. Well, that's our show for this week, but you can keep up with Almanac North by following us on social media. You'll find us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Visit the WDSE website for program updates, upcoming events, and more information about the station. And download the PBS video app for on-demand viewing of your favorite programs. Thanks to our guests and the crew here in the studio, I'm Dennis Anderson. Stay healthy, good night everybody, and be kind.